The citadel of Blackthorn Hollow stood on a cliff above the pine forest, its stone walls dark with age and its halls always cold, even in summer. Everyone who lived there spoke of the Alpha King in whispers, and no one, not even his closest guards, dared to meet his eyes for long. His name was Cale Thornwood, and he had ruled the Wolf Kingdom for 10 years, with a silence so heavy that servants often felt it press against their chests when he walked past. They said he had once smiled. They said that before his mate died, he had laughed easily and ruled with warmth instead of fear. But that Cale was gone now, buried somewhere beneath the crown he wore like a weight rather than an honor. The wolves who served him did their work quickly and left his presence as fast as they could, afraid that a single wrong word might bring down his fury. Only one person in the entire citadel did not seem to fear him at all. Her name was Wren, and she was a maid who had worked in the kitchens and private chambers since she was a child. She was quiet, careful, and unremarkable to most eyes, the kind of servant people forgot the moment she left a room. But she never trembled when Cale entered a hall. She never lowered her gaze too quickly, or rushed away when he spoke. She simply did her work, calm and steady, as though the king's temper meant nothing to her. The other servants thought she was either foolish or brave. In truth, she was neither. She carried something inside her that made fear seem small in comparison, a memory she had never told anyone, not even her closest friends in the kitchen. One evening, Cale noticed her stillness for the first time. He had summoned wine to his study, expecting the usual nervous hands and averted eyes. Instead, Wren entered, poured his cup without spilling a drop, and looked directly at him before stepping back. "You are not afraid of me," he said. It was not a question. "No, my lord," she answered simply. "Everyone is afraid of me." "Then perhaps they do not know you," she said, and left before he could respond. Cale sat alone long after she had gone, turning her words over in his mind, like a stone he could not put down. It had been years since anyone spoke to him, as though he were simply a man, and not a monster wearing a crown. He told himself it did not matter. He told himself many things did not matter anymore. But he found himself watching for her after that. When she entered a room, some tight coil in his chest loosened, just slightly, just enough for him to notice its absence when she was gone. Weeks passed this way, small moments stitched together. Wren tended his chambers, brought his meals, tidied the ashes from his fire, and Cale found himself speaking more in her presence, asking small questions, listening for her quiet answers. The other wolves noticed but said nothing, unwilling to draw the king's attention toward themselves by commenting on his maid. Then came the night everything changed. It was late, past the hour when even the guards had gone to rest, and Wren was carrying a stack of linens toward the west tower when she heard a sound she did not expect. A low, broken noise, more animal than words, came from the balcony at the top of the stairs. She should have turned back. Every instinct told her that whatever private grief the king was hiding, he would not want witnesses. But something in the sound stopped her feet from obeying her mind. She climbed the stairs slowly, and found him there, gripping the stone rail so tightly that cracks spread beneath his fingers. His eyes, usually so guarded, were wet, and his shoulders shook with something he was clearly trying, and failing, to hold inside. "My lord," she said softly. He turned, and for one unguarded second, she saw not the Alpha King, but a man drowning in something he had carried alone for far too long. Then his face hardened again, and he tried to compose himself, embarrassed to have been seen. "Leave me," he said, though his voice cracked on the words. She did not leave. Instead, she set down the linens and stood quietly beside him, not speaking, not touching, simply present. It was such a small thing, staying, but it was more than anyone had offered him in 10 years. Slowly, the tension in his shoulders eased, not because the pain had gone, but because for once, he did not have to carry it in complete solitude. "Why do you stay?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse. "Everyone else runs from me." Wren hesitated, and then, for the first time, she let him see the truth she had hidden since she was a child. "Because I was there," she said. "The night your mate died, I was in the forest when it happened. I was young, hiding from the fighting, and I saw everything." Cale went very still. No one survived that attack to tell the story. No one but me. I was a child. No one noticed a small girl hiding in the brush. I never told anyone what I saw, because I did not know how, and because I was afraid of what it would mean if I did. His breath came fast now, his eyes locked on hers. Tell me now. And so she did. She told him that the attack that night had not come only from the rival pack, as everyone believed. She told him that someone from within his own pack had opened the gate, had given the enemy the path they needed to reach his mate, before his warriors could stop them. She told him the name of the wolf who had done it, a trusted advisor who had died only 2 years later of illness, taking his betrayal to the grave with him, or so he had thought. Cale's hands began to shake. For 10 years, he had believed the failure was his own, that he had arrived too late, that his mate had died because he had not been strong enough or fast enough to save her. That guilt had shaped every decision he made afterward, every wall he built, every warmth he refused to let himself feel again. "You are certain," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have carried this memory every day since," Ren said. "I did not tell you sooner, because I did not know if the truth would help you or destroy what little peace you had built. But watching you tonight, I could not stay silent any longer. You have punished yourself for something that was never your fault." Cale turned away from her, gripping the rail again, but this time the tears that fell were different. They were not only grief, they were the first cracks of something being released after 10 long years of being locked away. "I built a cage around myself," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I told myself I could never care for anyone again, because if I did, I would fail them the way I believed I failed her. I told myself that was justice. That was the price I owed." "It was never a debt you owed," Ren said gently. "It was a wound you never let heal." They stood together as the night deepened, and for the first time since his mate's death, Cale allowed himself to grieve fully, without shame, without hiding it behind anger or silence. Ren did not try to fix him or rush him. She simply stayed, offering the one thing he had been missing for a decade, someone who saw him clearly and did not look away. In the days that followed, Cale changed, though not suddenly, not dramatically. The change came slowly, the way ice thaws when the season finally turns. He began speaking more openly with his advisors. He began holding his warriors' gazes, without the coldness that had once made them look away first. He ordered a quiet investigation into the truth Ren had given him, seeking any remaining evidence of the betrayal, wanting not vengeance, but understanding, a way to finally close the wound that had never properly healed. The investigation confirmed what Ren had told him: old records, hidden messages, and the testimony of a few surviving guards who had been too frightened to speak years before, all pointed to the same truth. The betrayal had been real, and Cale's guilt had been built on a lie he told himself out of grief, rather than fact. With the truth finally settled, something in Cale settled too. He began seeking Ren out, not only in the quiet moments when duty brought her to his chambers, but in the open, walking with her through the Citadel gardens, asking about her life, her family, the years she had spent watching him from the shadows of her work. She told him about her own losses, her own quiet grief, and slowly they found in each other a kind of understanding that neither had known they were missing. The pack noticed the change in their king long before anyone dared to speak of it. He smiled more easily. His voice, once clipped and cold, softened when he addressed his people. Even the guards who had once flinched at his approach found themselves standing straighter, not out of fear, but out of a strange new respect that came from watching a broken king slowly become whole again. Then came the evening of the autumn gathering, when the entire pack assembled in the great hall to mark the changing season, as they did every year. Cale stood at the front of the hall, and instead of the usual brief and distant address he had given for the past decade, he spoke at length, his voice steady and clear. He told them the truth of what had happened the night his mate died. He told them of the betrayal that had been hidden for so long, and of the guilt he had carried wrongly for 10 years. The hall fell utterly silent as he spoke, wolves who had feared him for a decade now watching him with something closer to compassion. Then he turned toward the back of the hall, where Ren stood among the other servants, trying to remain unseen as she always did. "Come forward," he said. She hesitated, but the pack parted to let her through, and she walked toward the front of the hall with her heart pounding, unsure of what was about to happen. "For 10 years, Kale said, addressing his people but looking only at her, I ruled this pack as a man who believed himself responsible for a tragedy that was never his fault. I built walls around my heart, because I believed that was the price of my failure. This maid, whom many of you passed without a second glance, carried a truth she was too young to understand for most of her life, and when she finally found the courage to share it, she gave me back something I thought I had lost forever." He knelt then, in front of the entire pack, before the servant girl no one had ever thought to notice. "You were the only one who was never afraid of me," he said, "because you were the only one who truly saw me, even in my worst moments. I do not know how to repay a debt like that, except to promise that I will spend the rest of my life trying." The hall remained silent, stunned by the sight of their king kneeling before a maid. But slowly, one by one, the wolves began to bow their heads too, not out of fear this time, but out of respect, for a truth that had finally been spoken aloud after so many years of silence. Wren knelt beside him, her eyes filled with tears she did not try to hide. "I did not do it for repayment," she whispered. "I did it because you deserve to know the truth, and because no one should carry a curse that was never truly theirs." Kale reached for her hand, and for the first time in 10 years, the citadel of Blackthorn Hollow did not feel cold at all. From that night on, the pack told a different story about their king, one not of fear, but of a man who had been lost in grief and found his way back through the honesty of someone who had never been afraid to see him as he truly was. And though the wolves still respected the strength and authority of their alpha king, they no longer whispered his name with dread. Instead, they spoke of the maid who had broken a curse no blade or magic could touch, simply by telling the truth and refusing to look away.